they asked the nurse. Why does our child have superpowers? She said the Kyrium isn't supposed to work that way. What do you mean it's not supposed to work that way? Carlos asked, his eyes narrowing in confusion. The nurse hesitated, her eyes darting around the hospital corridor as if she feared being overheard. The Kyrium.it quote S, an experimental drug meant to enhance physical abilities in emergency situations. But it's not supposed to .it quote S, not supposed to give children superpowers. Lucia's grip on Carlos's arm tightened. What do you mean superpowers? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The nurse's eyes locked onto Ava, who was currently levitating a toy in the air. I mean, abilities like that. Telekinesis, telepathy, .it quote, S not normal. The Kyrium was only meant to enhance physical strength and agility, not unlock psychic abilities. Carlos's face darkened. You're saying that you gave our child an untested drug without our consent? The nurse took a step back, her hands raised in a defensive gesture. I had to act fast. Lucia was bleeding out. The child was in distress. I didn't have a choice. And I never expected this. Lucia's voice was cold. You never expected what? That our child would become a superhero? The nurse's face paled. No, I never expected it to work like this. The Kyrium was meant to be a temporary solution, not a permanent alteration. The room fell silent, the only sound Ava's giggles as she continued to play with her toys, her eyes shining with an otherworldly energy. Carlos' eyes blazed with determination as he grasped the nurse's arm, his grip firm but controlled. Listen carefully, he said, his voice low and urgent. You're coming with us to the council chambers by 6 p.m. You're going to explain to them what you've done, how you gave our child an untested drug without our consent. You're going to tell them how it's changed her and how it's put her in danger. The nurse's eyes widened, her face pale as she tried to pull away. I can't just leave my shift and I can't just go to the council. It's not that simple, she protested. Carlos's grip tightened, his eyes flashing with anger. Make it simple, he growled. You're coming with us, or we'll make sure everyone knows what you've done. You'll lose your job, your reputation, everything. You'll be the one who's put our child in danger. Lucia's voice was firm, her eyes flashing with anger. We're not going to let you get away with this, she said. You're going to take responsibility for what you've done. The nurse's eyes darted back and forth between them, her face pale and frightened. Okay, I'll come with you, she stammered. Carlos's grip relaxed, his eyes never leaving hers. Good, he said. We'll be at the council chambers by 6 p.m. Be there. They arrived at the council at 6 p.m. The council chambers were dimly lit, the only sound the soft hum of holographic screens flickering in the background. Carlos, Lucia, and Ava sat in the front row, their eyes fixed on the man they had met earlier, the counselor. Are you ready to proceed? The counselor asked, his voice firm but detached. Carlos and Lucia exchanged a nervous glance. Not yet, Carlos replied, his voice firm. Just then the door slid open and the nurse walked in, her eyes cast downward. Ah, nurse, yes, the counselor said, his eyes flicking towards her. Please, take a seat. The nurse hesitated, her eyes darting towards Carlos and Lucia, before she sat down beside them. The counselor's eyes narrowed. Now, let us begin. Nurse, you have been brought here to explain the, unusual circumstances surrounding Ava's birth. The nurse swallowed hard, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't mean to cause any harm. I just wanted to save the child. Carlos's eyes blazed with anger. Save the child? He repeated, his voice low and deadly. You've turned our child into a superpowered being without our consent. The counselor's eyes flashed with warning. Carlos, please. Let the nurse explain. But Carlos was beyond reason. Explain? He snarled. You're going to explain how you've ruined our lives? The nurse's words hung in the air like a confession, her eyes pleading for understanding. It was the drug we were experimenting with, the Kyrium. We didn't know it would affect her child in this way. I swear it was the only option I had in mind at the time, sir. The counselor's expression turned skeptical. The Kyrium, that's a highly controversial drug, nurse. It's not even approved for human testing yet. What made you think it was safe to use on Lucia? The nurse hesitated, her eyes darting towards Carlos and Lucia before returning to the counselor. I knew it was a risk, but I had no other choice. Lucia was bleeding out, and the child was in distress. I had to act fast. Lucia's voice was laced with anger. So you took a chance on an untested drug without our consent? That's unacceptable. The nurse's face crumpled, tears streaming down her face. I'm so sorry, Lucia. I never meant to harm your child. I was just trying to save her. Carlos's eyes narrowed, his voice cold. Save her? You've turned our child into a superpowered being, nurse. How is that saving her? The counselor's voice interrupted, firm but measured. Enough, Carlos. Nurse, your actions have indeed caused unintended consequences. We will need to discuss this further in private. The nurse nodded, still crying, as the counselor gestured to the guards. Take her away. We will reconvene shortly. The guards led the nurse away, her sobs echoing down the corridor as they locked her in a cell. The counselor turned to Carlos and Lucia, his expression stern but calculating. Listen carefully, couple. We understand your concerns, but we cannot let this situation escalate. We need to maintain order and control. Until further notice, you must keep your child hidden from the public eye. No more incidents like this. Carlos' eyes narrowed, his voice low and defiant. What are you saying? You want us to hide our child? Like she's some kind of criminal? The counselor's eyes flashed with warning. I'm saying that we need to contain this situation for everyone's safety. Your child's abilities are too unpredictable, too dangerous. We can't have her causing any more disturbances. Lucia's voice was firm, her eyes flashing with determination. We won't hide our child. She's innocent, and she deserves to live a normal life. The counselor's smile was cold, calculating. Normal? Your child is far from normal, Lucia, and if you don't comply, we will take her away, permanently. Carlos's eyes blazed with anger, but Lucia's hand on his arm restrained him. We understand, she said, her voice tight with tension. We'll keep her hidden. For now. The counselor's eyes seemed to bore into their souls, as if searching for any sign of defiance. Then with a curt nod, he dismissed them. Very well. You may leave. But remember, we are watching.